We're almost at the end of this mini-series on most common Module 2 mistakes. The theme for today is lifesavers and shoulder checks. So when should we do lifesavers and shoulder checks? And are you being consistent with your lifesavers and shoulder checks? One lifesaver that always needs to be done is when you're turning right. So mirrors signal lifesaver and position, turning right into a side road. Just before you turn, you should be checking over your shoulder to make sure that you're not being overtaken by the vehicles behind before you actually take the commitment to turn across the carriageway. So always a lifesaver to turn right up into a side road. Your instructor will be looking for you to consistently do that lifesaver prior to turning right with enough time that if there was a vehicle there that you would be able to stop or not turn. Some people do the lifesaver so late that it's as they turn rather than before they turn. So try to make sure that you check in good time, not too early but not too late. It's the last thing you do before you turn with enough time not to turn if there is a problem. In my 12-13 years of riding, I think I've only had cars overtaking me about 4 times. It's a very small proportion of the number of times that I've probably done a lifesaver to turn right, thinking there's never anything there, what's the point of this? But the point is it's a lifesaver. On the small number of occasions when there is something there, it's going to save your life. So get your lifesaver in for turning right into a side road. Remember there's 2, there's one to get into position and then one just before you turn. Okay, what else do we do? Shoulder checks and lifesavers. Any time that we need to significantly move positions, I'm going to move out past the parked car, so it's a shoulder check. So remember, it's also part of your procedure for coming out past parked vehicles, because you're significantly changing position, and once again you're checking that you're not being overtaken before you actually start to move out into that position. Even if you've stopped, you still need a lifesaver to come out, even if you've been checking your mirrors, because you're not in your mirrors all the time, so you need to check that it's safe. Lifesaver, move position, coming into the safest position, which is as far away from the parked vehicles as possible. What's the difference between shoulder checks and lifesavers? Interesting question. To me, I tend to describe the shoulder checks as being those checks that you do before you move off, and lifesavers are the ones that you do whilst you're moving, generally. But on occasion, I'll also say shoulder check instead of lifesaver, because they are the same thing. You're still checking the same area. Now, another question is, where exactly should we be looking and how much should we be moving our head when we're doing a lifesaver or a shoulder check? So if we were stationary and moving off in moving traffic, so not from the side of the road, I'm just going to pretend I'm in a line of traffic now and I've stopped and then I need to move off. Whilst you're stationary, you will be checking your mirrors, but you won't be staring in your mirrors, so you've not got your eye on them all the time. So if we're in queuing traffic, I'm just going to pretend we're in queuing traffic because I might not be able to find a queue, so we'll just pretend we're in queuing traffic. But if we are queuing and we're checking our mirrors, there's going to be occasions where we're looking straight ahead, which means we might miss something in the mirrors. Then perhaps the lights change. We've not been looking in the mirrors, therefore we need to check the blind spots. Now, where should we be looking and how far around should we be turning our head? Where you're aiming to look is down and to the left and down and to the right. So if you imagine you're looking behind you down towards the car number plate that's behind you, and that's the right area, and it's a chin to shoulder movement, so nothing more than this. That's your movement, chin to shoulder. It's not an owl, so an owl is a, oh, I'm going to look all the way behind me, because if you do that and then you do it the other way, 1, it's taking you a long time to do. 2, you'll get a crick neck, And 3, that's not necessary because that's what your mirrors are for. Your mirrors show you what's really far down the road behind you. Your shoulder check tells you what's in the blind spot of your mirror, which is down and to the right, chin to shoulder, and down and to the left, chin to shoulder. So your shoulder checks, it doesn't matter which one you do first, but chin to shoulder, and then you're off. For moving off from the side of the road, there is also a shoulder check, and that's going to happen as the last thing before you move off. And once again, it's just a Lifesaver, so chin to shoulder, it's not an owl, because whilst you're stationary you should be using your mirrors. So use your mirrors, good to go, indicator, Lifesaver, and go. And again, you can hear me saying shoulder check and Lifesaver interchangeably. They are the same thing. Doesn't really matter how we refer to it. It's a chin to shoulder movement. There are not many times where you need to do a complete look behind you on a motorbike. Probably one of the only times that I do a further around look behind is when I'm joining a dual carriageway and I'm not totally certain, because it's at an awkward angle, that I can see either in the mirror or even when I do my shoulder check or my standard Lifesaver. So I do occasionally, when I'm joining the faster moving traffic on slip roads, do more of an owl to be 100% certain that I'm not about to pull onto the main carriageway at high speed onto or into another vehicle. We also do Lifesavers or shoulder checks when the lanes are merging. So when you have 2 lanes of traffic and you can quite clearly see that ahead of you there's only 1 lane of traffic, or you can see the merging lanes arrows, the bendy arrows that are encouraging traffic to merge back in. There's not always arrows, however, so you need to notice when you've got 2 lanes approaching a junction and then only 1 lane afterwards. And depending on your position or which lane you're in originally, that will determine which side the Lifesaver needs to be. So we're in 2 lanes approaching the traffic lights. Look all the way up the road, there's only 1 lane. It's quite useful actually that we're going to stop here. So on this occasion you can see quite clearly we're in 2 lanes, and you can see the merging lanes arrows telling this lane they need to merge into the lane on the left. So as we approach those merging lanes arrows, we'd be checking over our left shoulder to make sure that there's nothing in the blind spot as we're moving in to merge. Shoulders to move off, and then shoulder check and merge. And we merge into the middle of the lane when we merge. Try not to end up in position 1 or 3. So once again, there's 2 lanes coming down into 1 lane. So let's do an early Lifesaver, and then we've made an early decision. Now if there was a vehicle there, I'd be able to make an early decision as to whether I needed to accelerate away or drop back. And then I'd probably do another Lifesaver when I was finally merging, because at that point I wouldn't have merged because the vehicle was there. So on occasion you may need to do 2 Lifesavers for merging lanes, one that's nice and early, so you've made an early plan, and if there is a vehicle there, then do another one to complete the merge. Another time that we do a Lifesaver is to change lanes. So changing lanes, mirrors signal, Lifesaver, change lanes. Never just trust your mirrors. We get a lot of students changing lanes through just using their mirrors, and it's not safe because you could quite easily miss something in your mirrors and then move into another vehicle. Once again, changing lanes, Lifesaver. Remember, there are Lifesavers as part of your turning left or turning right procedures. Mirrors signal Lifesaver position. Oh, thanks, Mr. Taxi. Some people do more Lifesavers than are necessary. Try to avoid doing unnecessary lifesavers because it actually means you are looking behind you when you should be looking ahead. There's also lifesavers for exiting a roundabout. And if you haven't yet, try and watch my Roundabouts uploads because roundabouts are very simple once you've grasped the concept of how to do it. On the approach to the roundabout, you'll be checking your mirrors and choosing your lane with a lifesaver to change lanes if necessary. However, when you get onto the roundabout, there is no lifesaver until you want to exit. So if we're going straight ahead at a roundabout, there's no lifesavers on the approach. We're just bringing our speed down, choosing the gear, staying in the correct lane, indicator, lifesaver to the big gap, and exit. Now I want to change lanes, so mirrors, signal, lifesaver, change. We're going to turn right around this roundabout. We're going all the way around, but treating it like a right turn. So this is fourth exit right turn. Keeping it tight as we come onto the roundabout is quite important. A lot of people swing out wide there and end up in the wrong lane, even though it's not lane marked. It is big enough for 2 vehicles. Indicator, lifesaver to the big gap, and exit. This time we'll go straight ahead in lane 2, which is also possible. So straight ahead lane 2. Again, indicator, lifesaver to the big gap, and then exit. Now I want to change lanes, mirrors, signal, lifesaver, change. I don't need another lifesaver before I turn left because there was nothing on my left as I approached and my mirrors were good on the approach. So let's recap. When do we do lifesavers and shoulder checks? When we're moving off from a stationary position, when our feet have been down for a long period of time, or foot has been down for a long period of time. If when you come to a stop, you only dab your foot and then the traffic moves off again, you can just do mirrors. You don't have to do shoulder checks at that point. But on this occasion, it looks like we're going to be stopping, so we'll plan the braking, bringing the speed down and down through the gears as appropriate for the speed that we're slowing down to. Now we're going to be stopping for a period of time. My foot's down. Whilst we stop, we're checking mirrors. Lights are changing, so now it's shoulder checks. And then there's another one, which is mirrors. Signal, lifesaver on position for turning left because we're turning, so it's part of our normal procedure for turning left or right. A right shoulder check or a right lifesaver for turning right is the last thing you do when you're turning into a side road. Remembering you've already done a lifesaver to get into position to turn. Anytime you're significantly changing position, which includes coming around parked vehicles, lifesaver. Lifesavers for exiting roundabouts, and any other time that you are significantly moving position or changing lanes. Simply because your mirrors don't give you the full picture of what could be behind you in that space that's next to you.